Snow covered the city like a thick white blanket, beautiful to look at but painfully cold to feel. People walked fast, wrapped in warm coats, scarves tight around their necks, eager to reach heated homes. Christmas lights glowed on every street, twinkling like tiny stars, and cheerful music played from shop doors. Festive, bright, joyful, but joy did not belong to everyone. In the middle of the bustling street stood a small boy, maybe 10 or 11 years old. His hair was messy, full of winter wind. His cheeks were red and dry from the cold. His clothes were thin, too thin for December frost. His shoes were worn, the sole paling, and his fingers were stiff and purple from freezing air. Still, he held a small musical instrument close to his chest, as if it was the only warm thing he owned. He pressed the instrument to his lips and blew softly. A thin sound came out, quiet, trembling. People passed by, some without looking, some with quick glances, some with silent pity. A few dropped coins into the small paper cup beside him, but most were too busy, too comfortable, too distracted to notice him fully. Yet he played. He played not for money alone, but for survival. Music was his home, his bed, his blanket. It kept him from feeling completely alone in the world. Every note he played was a memory, some painful, some precious. Sometimes he remembered a small warm room, a woman humming softly while cooking, a man tapping rhythm on the table as if the whole house were an instrument. But those memories faded as quickly as they came. The present was cold. The present was hungry. The present was him standing on icy pavement playing Christmas songs for strangers. His stomach rumbled, empty since morning. He swallowed hard and kept playing. If he stopped, he feared he might collapse from cold, from hunger, or from sadness. Music gave him a reason to stand. He watched people move like rivers around him, mothers holding gift bags, children laughing with mittens on their hands, couples taking pictures beside Christmas decorations. He wished he could be part of that world, warm, loved, safe. Instead, he stood outside all of it, like someone looking through a window at a life they could never touch. Still, he didn't envy them. He only wished someone would stop, just once, really stop and listen to his music, not to the coins dropping, not to the idea of charity. He wanted to be heard, truly heard. He changed the song to a soft Christmas melody, gentle like falling snow. This time his fingers moved faster, as if his body forgot the cold for a moment. The tune grew warm, deep, surprisingly beautiful for a boy so young. A few people paused. A woman smiled softly. A little girl tugged her mother's hand, wanting to stay longer. For a moment hope flickered. Then the wind blew harder. Snowflakes struck his face like tiny needles. He shivered but continued playing. He could not stop. This music was his chance, his voice, his survival. Each note was like a small flame fighting darkness. He looked at the cup beside him, only a few coins, barely enough for bread. His heart sank, but he played louder, pouring everything he had left into the melody. Pain, hunger, loneliness, all inside the sound. A song so soft and full of feeling that even the street seemed to breathe slower. Night grew closer. Lights sparkled brighter, people rushed faster. The boy played one last long note and it hung in the air like a snowflake suspended in time. He lowered the instrument slowly, his breath visible in cold air. His hands shook. He rubbed them together for warmth, but it didn't help much. He looked around, still homeless, still hungry, still invisible, but inside him lived something powerful. Something even he didn't fully understand, a natural gift, raw and pure. A talent that could move hearts if only someone took the time to listen. He looked down at his instrument, cracked, scratched, old yet loved. He whispered to himself, voice trembling, "Tomorrow I will play again." Because even if the world was cold, his music still carried warmth. He stepped into a corner, curling his body to sleep, snow gathering around his feet. Christmas lights blinked above him, shining softly like stars watching over a forgotten child. No one knew that the boy shivering beneath them was more than homeless, more than hungry. He was a natural virtuoso, unheard yet extraordinary, and soon the world would know. The next morning arrived slowly, pale light spreading across icy sidewalks. The boy woke up with stiffness in his limbs and cold stuck deep inside his bones. His fingers hurt so much it felt like winter had settled under his skin forever. He rubbed his hands together, breathing warm air onto them, hoping they would loosen enough to play again. He had no blanket, no pillow, only his instrument lying beside him like a loyal friend that refused to leave. He stood up, brushed snow off his clothes, and took a deep breath. Today, like every day, he would play. Not because he wanted to, because he needed to. His stomach ached with emptiness. He hadn't eaten a full meal in days, and the small coins collected yesterday were barely enough for a piece of bread. Still, he held hope like a candle in the wind. He returned to the street corner where he always played. People were already moving, office workers, students, shoppers with bright holiday bags. Christmas was close. Everyone seemed busy and happy, everyone except him. He took out his instrument and held it to his lips. His fingers trembled, slow at first, but he forced them to obey. He played the same Christmas song as yesterday, but softer, like asking the world to listen instead of demanding attention. His melody floated through the cold air like smoke, fragile but beautiful. And then something unexpected happened. A long black car stopped near the crossing. Not just any car, a luxury vehicle polished so clean that Christmas lights reflected like gold across its surface. The back door opened slowly and a tall man stepped out wearing a long coat made of expensive fabric. His watch shined. His shoes cost more than the boy earned in a month. He walked with confidence, the type of confidence only wealth gives. People moved aside without him needing to ask. He was known, powerful, respected, envied. He was a tycoon, owner of several successful companies, feared in business for his sharp decisions and colder heart. He heard music faint, trembling. Curious, he turned his head and saw the boy. The child stood in the snow like a fragile little bird blowing soft notes into the cold wind, his hair messy, his face pale, his clothes torn. Instead of compassion, the tycoon felt amusement. A homeless child playing Christmas music, to him it looked almost ridiculous. He walked closer, hands in pockets, eyes cold like steel. The boy noticed the shadow approaching. He lowered his instrument slightly, unsure if he should stop or keep playing. Fear flickered in his eyes. Strangers often frightened him, especially those who looked powerful. Still, he gathered courage and whispered, voice weak but polite. "Sir, may I play a Christmas song for you? Maybe you could spare a coin, even a little." The tycoon raised one eyebrow. A laugh bubbled in his throat, not kind but sharp like broken glass. "You," he scoffed, "play for me. A child like you." People nearby paused. Some watched with curiosity, some with pity, some with cruel interest. The boy stood still, gripping his instrument harder as if holding onto hope by its handle. The man chuckled louder, shaking his head. "You think your little street music has value," he said. "Christmas talent costs more than a few shaky notes, boy." The words hit like icy wind, harder than hunger, sharper than cold. But the child didn't step back. His voice trembled, but his courage stood tall. "Please, just one song. If you listen, I promise you'll feel something." The tycoon laughed even louder. "Feel something? I doubt that." His driver smirked. A group of shoppers passing by slowed down to watch. Some whispered, pointing at the boy, waiting to see what would happen. Snow continued to fall, soft but endless. The child nodded once quietly, then lifted his instrument again. He played. This time he didn't hold back. The notes came flowing like a river breaking free from ice. Slow at first, gentle, warm, then powerfully rising with emotion stronger than cold, richer than money. Every breath he took became music. Every tremble in his fingers became expression. People turned, people stopped, people listened. The tycoon, still smirking, began to freeze, not from weather but from shock. The boy's music didn't sound like a homeless child's attempt. It sounded like beauty wrapped in hardship, like Christmas wrapped in longing. It carried sorrow, hope, hunger, winter, all in one trembling melody. The boy played until the final note hung in the air like a shining snowflake, delicate and unforgettable. Silence followed, deep, heavy, astonished silence. Nobody laughed now, not even the tycoon. He stood still, mouth slightly open, unable to speak. The boy lowered his instrument slowly, breath shaky, body tired. He didn't know if he impressed them, he only knew he gave everything he had left. But the crowd knew. The tycoon knew. They had just witnessed something rare, pure talent born in the cold. The boy wasn't just playing Christmas music. He was Christmas music, raw, emotional, beautiful. And the tycoon who laughed was about to learn just how wrong he had been. For several long seconds, the street stayed still, as if time itself paused to breathe. Snowflakes drifted slowly to the ground, lights flickered softly above shop windows, and complete silence wrapped around the boy like a blanket. He stood there, eyes lowered, waiting for someone to speak. Waiting for rejection, waiting for laughter to return, but none came. The tycoon, who moments ago laughed with confidence and pride, now stood frozen. His hands remained in his pockets, but his expression had changed. The amusement in his eyes had faded, replaced by something unfamiliar, confusion, shock, perhaps even admiration he was too proud to show. People began whispering softly, not with mockery but with wonder. "Did you hear that? That boy, he plays like a trained musician. He's just a child, how is that possible?" The boy tightened his grip around his instrument. His breath came out in shaky clouds, frightened of what would happen now. The tycoon stepped closer, not with arrogance this time, but with curiosity fighting his disbelief. "Where did you learn to play like that?" he asked, voice no longer sharp but stiff, like someone standing on the edge of a truth they cannot escape. The boy swallowed. His lips trembled as he answered softly. "I taught myself, sir." The crowd gasped quietly. Even the tycoon blinked in surprise. Self-taught. A homeless boy with no teacher, no lessons, no room to practice except cold streets, playing like a virtuoso. The tycoon looked down at the child, really looked, perhaps for the first time. He saw beyond ragged clothing. He saw beyond dirt and hunger. He saw talent raw, brilliant, impossible to ignore, but pride is stubborn. Instead of praising, he smirked again, but this time the smirk was weak, uncertain. Anyone can play one good song, he said, though his voice lacked confidence. If you truly have talent, play something else, something difficult. The boy hesitated. His fingers burned from cold and hunger made his stomach twist painfully, but he nodded. He had only one way to survive in this world, through music, and if he failed now, he feared nobody would listen again. He lifted his instrument once more. This time he played a piece few adults could play perfectly. A classical Christmas variation, fast, complex, full of emotion and technique. His hands raced, but every note landed like clean snow on still ground. There were no mistakes, no hesitation, only music pouring out like a secret finally spoken aloud. People gathered closer, phones pointed at him. Some recorded with trembling hands. A mother wiped a tear from her cheek. A man removed his hat in respect. Even those who walked past quickly turned back, drawn by a sound that felt like winter melting into spring. The Tycoon's eyes widened slowly. He wasn't smiling now, he wasn't mocking, he was listening, truly listening. The music reached him in places money could not buy. His chest tightened, his throat felt warm, and memories he never wanted to remember came rushing back, memories of his childhood. A small house, a dusty piano, a father teaching him simple melodies. A dream he abandoned for business, money, power. He had forgotten music. This child reminded him. The song ended gently, like falling snow touching the earth without a sound. The boy lowered his instrument again, chest rising and falling from breath. His eyes lifted slightly, scared, hopeful. A child waiting for judgment, silence. Then applause, not small, not hesitant, a wave of applause crashing like thunder. People cheered, clapped, whistled. A few even shouted bravo. Cars slowed to watch. Strangers smiled through tears. For the first time ever, he wasn't invisible. All eyes now admired him. And the Tycoon. He stood still, staring, speechless. The boy stepped closer, voice soft as snow. "Sir, I only wanted a meal, just something warm." The Tycoon felt something inside him break, pride, ego, blindness. How foolish he had been. He laughed at a gift greater than wealth. He mocked a child richer than him in spirit. He looked at the boy long and hard, then spoke, but his voice was no longer hard. "Come with me," he said. The crowd gasped. The boy froze. Hope flickered behind tired eyes. "Let's get you warm first," the Tycoon added and fed. For the first time in years, the boy smiled, small, fragile, but shining like a star over snow. Little did he know. This was not the end. This was the beginning of a life no longer cold or forgotten. A life his music was about to rewrite completely. The boy followed the Tycoon slowly through snow-covered streets, his small footsteps nearly disappearing beside the man's long, confident strides. Yet something about this moment felt unreal, as if he were stepping out of darkness and into light, one quiet step at a time. He held his instrument close, afraid that if he loosened his grip even a little, this moment might vanish like snow melting on warm skin. They walked into a warm restaurant with golden lights and steaming plates of food. The sudden heat felt like fire against his frozen skin. His fingers tingled painfully as warmth returned to them. The boy shivered, not from cold anymore, but because he wasn't used to kindness. The Tycoon gestured for him to sit. A waiter hurried to their table, confused but respectful. The boy lowered himself into the chair carefully, as though he wasn't sure he belonged there. Soft Christmas music played in the background, gentle notes touching his ears like a memory of home. "What would you like to eat?" the Tycoon asked. The boy looked down shyly. He had never been asked that. He usually took whatever scraps he found, stale bread, old fruit, leftovers from trash bins. He didn't know how to choose. "Maybe something warm," he whispered. A moment later, a bowl of hot soup was placed in front of him. Steam rose into his face, soft and comforting like a hug he had missed for too many years. His eyes watered, not because it was hot, but because it felt like care. Real care. He ate slowly, savoring every sip. The Tycoon watched in silence, no arrogance now, no laughter, only thought, only realization. A wealthy man used to power and deals was looking at a child who had nothing, yet held more talent than most people with everything. After the meal, the Tycoon leaned forward. "What is your name?" The boy blinked, surprised that someone wanted to know. "Liam," he answered softly. The Tycoon nodded. "Liam, that's a strong name." What? Liam smiled faintly, unused to hearing his own name spoken kindly. The Tycoon continued, voice lower, heavier. "Where are your parents?" Liam looked down at his hands, fingers still trembling slightly. He squeezed the instrument closer to his chest. "I don't know," he said. "They left a long time ago. Maybe they had no choice, maybe something happened." His voice cracked. "All I remember is music my father used to hum. My mother sang, they smiled when I played." He paused, throat tight. "Then I was alone." The restaurant fell into a hush around them. Even the Tycoon, a man known for being unmoved by emotion, felt his chest tighten. He realized the boy's music wasn't just skill, it was survival, it was memory, it was love he refused to let die. "Do you know what you are, Liam?" the tycoon asked quietly. Liam shook his head. "You're a prodigy," the man said. "A natural virtuoso, born with something people spend years trying to learn." Liam's eyes widened, the words felt unbelievable, unreal, too big for a small boy who slept on cold streets. "A virtuoso." "Yes, and your talent needs a stage." His voice grew firm, a promise instead of pity. Liam's heart beat fast. He felt something warm inside, hope beginning to unfurl like a small leaf in winter. The tycoon leaned back, breath heavy. "I laughed at you earlier," he said, guilt thick in every word. "I judged you by your clothes, not your gift. I saw poverty, not brilliance, and I was wrong." He looked directly into Liam's eyes, not down at him but into him. "You deserve more than survival, Liam. You deserve a chance." The boy's breath caught, fragile like snow resting on a window ledge. "A chance to play," he whispered. "A chance to live," the tycoon replied. Liam didn't know what to say. A life he never dared to imagine was opening like a door he thought forever locked. His fingers rested on his instrument, and for the first time they didn't tremble from cold but from possibility. The tycoon stood up slowly. "Come with me, I want to show you something." They walked out of the restaurant into the snowy night, but the cold didn't bite the same way it had before. Liam felt warmer not because of food or shelter, but because someone finally saw him. Not as a homeless child, not as a beggar on the street, but as music, as potential, as talent, as a virtuoso yet to be heard by the world. And though snow still fell softly around them, Liam felt as if Christmas lights finally shone for him. Snowflakes continued to fall like white feathers drifting from a silent sky as Liam followed the tycoon through the evening streets. This time he didn't walk behind, he walked beside him. A small thing, but to Liam it felt like stepping into a new world where he was not beneath anyone, not invisible, not forgotten. They eventually stopped outside a tall building made of glass and steel, sparkling from top to bottom with Christmas lights. Liam looked up in awe. He had never stood this close to such a beautiful place. The tycoon pressed a code on the door and they stepped inside. Warm air rushed toward them, smelling faintly of cinnamon and fresh pine. Liam's toes tingled painfully as they thawed inside his shoes. The lobby was stunning. Marble floors reflected golden light, and a towering Christmas tree stood in the center, decorated with silver ribbons, delicate ornaments, and hundreds of glowing bulbs. Liam stared up as if seeing magic for the first time. Christmas had always been distant for him, something he watched others enjoy through windows. But here, the world finally felt like it was opening its doors instead of closing them. The tycoon guided him into a private elevator. Liam's heart pounded as they rose higher and higher. When the doors opened, they stepped into a large penthouse filled with paintings, bookshelves, soft carpets, and windows showing the city like a sea of stars. "Welcome," the tycoon said, voice gentler than ever before. "This is my home." Liam hesitated at the doorway, unsure if someone like him was allowed to enter such a place. The tycoon noticed and placed a hand on his shoulder, firm, reassuring. "You belong here right now." Those words settled deep into Liam's heart like warm bread settling into an empty stomach. He stepped inside, then he saw it. In the center of the room stood a grand piano, black, polished, elegant, shining like night sky glass. It was the most beautiful instrument Liam had ever seen. His breath caught. His hand loosened around the small worn instrument he carried, dwarfed by the instrument in front of him. The tycoon watched his reaction carefully. "Can you play?" he asked. Liam's throat tightened. This piano looked like it belonged in palaces, in concert halls filled with chandeliers and velvet seats. He was just a boy from the street. What if he wasn't worthy of touching something so perfect? What if he wasn't worthy of touching something so perfect? But then he remembered the crowd earlier. The applause, the shock in the tycoon's eyes, the music that came from inside him, not from wealth or lessons, from pain, hope, memory. Slowly he walked to the piano. His fingers hovered inches above the keys. He could see his reflection in the glossy surface, small, trembling, but determined. He pressed one key. A soft note filled the room, pure, warm, like liquid gold. He pressed another, then another. And then he played, not a complex piece, not something to impress, just a simple Christmas melody that felt like home, like his childhood, like laughter long gone, like warm hands that once guided his tiny fingers. The room fell still. The tycoon leaned against the wall, eyes distant, listening not just with ears but with everything inside him. He wasn't hearing a performance, he was hearing a story. A story of a boy who had lost everything except music. A story of survival through sound. When Liam finished, he looked up shyly, waiting, hoping, scared. The tycoon didn't clap. He stepped forward and knelt beside him. "You're not just talented," he said quietly. "You're extraordinary." What? Liam's eyes filled but didn't spill. No one had ever spoken to him like that. No one had ever seen him beyond hunger and rags. The tycoon placed a hand over Liam's small, cold fingers. You should learn properly. You deserve education, training, a future. If you allow me," he paused, voice thick. "I will sponsor you. I will make sure your talent grows not on the streets but on stages where it belongs." Liam couldn't breathe. The words wrapped around him like a blanket he never thought he'd feel again. A future, a chance, a life. He nodded slowly, unable to speak through the weight of joy pressing against his chest. The tycoon smiled, a real smile, not the proud one he wore in business meetings. This one was human, warm, changed. Liam realized something. Maybe the music hadn't only changed his life. Maybe it began changing the tycoon too. On that snowy Christmas night, a wealthy man who once laughed at a homeless child now stood ready to become the reason his life transformed. Liam looked at his hands, still small, still cold, but now filled with possibility. His music would no longer echo in empty streets. Soon it would echo in concert halls. And for the first time the boy believed tomorrow will be different. The next morning looked different, not because the snow had stopped falling or the streets had grown louder, but because Liam woke up in a warm bed for the first time in years. Soft sheets wrapped around him, a thick blanket rested on his shoulders, and sunlight touched his face gently, instead of cold wind biting into his skin. For a few seconds he lay still, not moving, afraid that opening his eyes might break the dream. But when he finally looked around, the room was still there, real, safe, his. The tycoon had given him a guest room with a small Christmas wreath on the window and a lamp shaped like a star beside the bed. The warmth felt unreal. He sat up slowly, rubbing sleep from his eyes, and his hands didn't feel numb like they normally did every morning. Downstairs, the rich smell of breakfast drifted through the hallway: eggs, toast, warm milk, something sweet like cinnamon. Liam followed the smell quietly, afraid to make noise. The tycoon sat at the dining table reading a newspaper, but when he looked up and saw the boy, his expression softened. "Good morning," he said gently. Liam nodded shyly. "Good morning, sir." "Sit, eat," the man insisted, pointing to a plate already prepared for him. He must have asked the chef to make it early, knowing Liam would wake up hungry. Liam ate slowly at first, unsure if he should take more than small bites. But the tycoon smiled as if encouraging him, so the boy finally ate with full appetite, warmth filling not only his stomach but his heart. Later that day, everything changed again. The tycoon drove Liam across the city to a large building with tall glass doors and the words Royal Conservatory of Music engraved in gold above the entrance. Liam's steps slowed as they approached. This place was elite, a building where only wealthy, talented, trained musicians studied. He felt out of place, his old instrument strapped to his back like a reminder of the streets he came from. When they entered, the hallway echoed with scales and arpeggios. Music floated from every room, violins soaring like birds, pianos dancing like rain, choirs blending like warm light. Students in clean uniforms practiced passionately, unaware of the small boy watching with wide eyes. Liam felt small, smaller than ever. "What if I'm not good enough?" he whispered, voice tight. The tycoon looked down at him. "You played in the snow with frozen hands on an old instrument and still made people cry. If anyone here belongs, you do." Those words wrapped around Liam like armor. He nodded, courage returning slowly. The tycoon spoke to the director of the conservatory, a strict-looking woman with intelligent eyes and hair tied in a silver bun. At first she looked doubtful. Many wealthy people tried to push unprepared children into the academy. But the tycoon didn't argue, he simply gestured for Liam to play. The boy stood before a grand piano in the examination room. His heart pounded, palms sweating. His fingers trembled, not from cold but from fear. This wasn't a street corner, this was a place where talent was measured. He closed his eyes and played. At first his notes were quiet, shy, uncertain, but soon his music found strength. The melody lifted, filled the room, painted stories in the air. His fingers moved faster, smoother, telling stories of cold nights, hunger, and hope. Every note was honest, painful, beautiful. When he finished, the room was silent, the same silence he remembered from the street before applause. Then the director stood up slowly, shoulders relaxing as if she had been holding breath. "That," she said, voice trembling slightly, "was not practice." She stepped closer, "That was life played through hands." The tycoon smiled softly, proudly. The director continued, "He doesn't need beginner training. He needs mentorship, real mentorship." She offered Liam a scholarship on the spot, full training, private lessons, instruments, performance opportunities. Everything a young musician could dream of. Everything Liam had never imagined. He blinked, tears filling his eyes but refusing to fall. "Is this really for me?" he asked quietly. "Yes," she replied, "for you." The first lesson began the same week. Liam practiced every day, morning to night. His fingers were still small, sometimes shaky, but they moved with hunger, with heart, with everything life had carved into him. Teachers watched in awe as he learned pieces in days that took students months. He grew not just in skill, but in presence. The boy who once played for coins now played in halls where music echoed like gold. The tycoon attended his lessons often, sitting quietly at the back. He never interrupted, never rushed, he watched, and something began to change in him too. Wealth once defined him, power once controlled him, but now, watching Liam's journey, he felt something he had forgotten long ago. Warmth, pride. Humanity. Liam's music didn't just lift him, it healed the man who once laughed at him. One winter evening, after a long day of training, Liam stood before the tycoon. His eyes were shining with gratitude. "You changed my life," he said softly. The tycoon shook his head gently. "No, Liam, your music changed mine." The boy smiled, not the small, unsure smile he once wore, but a bright one filled with future. He knew now. He had a home, he had a teacher, he had a chance, and the world was finally listening. Weeks turned into months and snow slowly melted into early spring. Liam practiced every day, sometimes until his small fingertips turned red from effort. But he never complained. Every scale he mastered, every piece he learned, every trembling note he strengthened felt like reclaiming a piece of life that had once been taken from him. He no longer played for coins on the street. He played for progress, for dreams, for the music living inside him. Teachers at the conservatory spoke about him with admiration. Students who once looked past him now stopped to listen whenever his fingers touched the keys. Some watched with envy, others with respect, but none denied his brilliance. And through it all, the tycoon remained a constant presence. Sometimes he sat quietly in the back of the room, watching with a soft, thoughtful expression. Sometimes he stood by the door, arms crossed but eyes warm. Liam didn't know what the man thought during those long, silent moments, but he felt support, like an invisible hand steadying his path. One evening, after a long practice session, the tycoon approached him as the hall emptied. Outside, the sky glowed deep orange, fading into early night. The windows reflected Liam's small silhouette against the grand piano behind him, a contrast of humble beginnings and rising greatness. "You've come far," the tycoon said. Liam looked up, breathing slightly heavy from practice. "I still have more to learn." The man smiled, a soft, proud smile only earned through watching someone fight for their future. "And you will," he said. "Because you don't just practice with your hands, you practice with your heart." Liam lowered his eyes, shy but grateful. The compliment felt warmer than any blanket he'd owned on the streets. Then the tycoon placed something on the piano bench beside him, a gold-plated invitation letter. "For you." Liam picked it up carefully, hands trembling not from cold now but from shock. The letter was elegant, heavy paper with silver embossing. When he opened it, his breath stopped. It was an invitation to perform at the National Winter Gala concert, one of the biggest music events in the country. Only the finest musicians were invited, and his name was printed among them. Liam stared at it, stunned. "But I'm just..." The tycoon interrupted gently. "You're not just anything anymore, you earned this." What? The boy blinked, throat tightening. Tears blurred the text for a second. "I was once laughed at," he whispered. The tycoon nodded. "And now you will be applauded." Training became more intense after that. Liam practiced pieces beyond difficulty he ever imagined. Fast movements, emotional adagios, explosive crescendos. His teachers guided him with care, pushing him not harshly but purposefully. He grew stronger not just in skill but in confidence. There were nights he returned home exhausted, hands aching, mind overwhelmed. But then he remembered the cold pavement where he once stood alone. He remembered hunger chewing at his ribs, wind freezing his fingers, people walking past without seeing him. And suddenly tiredness became fuel. He practiced harder. Sometimes late at night, when the tycoon found him still at the piano, he placed a hand on Liam's shoulder and said only one thing: "Rest, so you can rise higher tomorrow." And Liam listened because rising mattered. Finally, the night of the gala arrived. The city glittered with snowflakes once again, just like the day their lives crossed. But this time Liam did not stand on a street corner. He arrived in a black car beside the tycoon, dressed in a fitted suit with polished shoes. His hair was combed neatly, his eyes bright, nervous but proud. The venue sparkled like a palace, chandeliers dripping with crystal, velvet-red curtains, musicians tuning instruments that shimmered under warm lights. Backstage buzzed with voices, excitement, tension. Liam felt his heartbeat like a drum in his chest. What if he failed this time? What if his fingers shook? What if the world expected brilliance but heard only imperfection? He closed his eyes and breathed. The memory of playing in the cold came back, that moment when the world finally heard him. He was no longer that shivering boy with numb fingers. He had grown, he had trained, he had earned his place here. When his name was called, he stepped onto the stage. The audience fell silent. He walked to the grand piano, not quickly, not fearfully, but with steady steps. The same instrument type he once feared to touch. Now he sat before it like it belonged to him. The spotlight warmed his face. He placed his fingers on the keys. He remembered hunger, cold nights, street lights flickering above empty sidewalks. He remembered laughter. He remembered being invisible. He remembered surviving. And then he remembered music. With a breath, he began to play. The first notes flowed like light spreading across a dark room. Soft, steady, calm like falling snowflakes settling gently on a quiet night. The audience leaned forward at once, drawn in by something they couldn't explain. There was clarity in his sound, but also pain, beauty, but also history. A child's fingers created music far older than he was, like he carried years inside him that no one had seen. His hands moved faster, his touch stronger, and soon the hall filled with emotion so powerful it felt like wind in the chest. People forgot to blink. Some forgot to breathe. The melody rose warm and brilliant as if Christmas itself had taken form in sound, shimmering, alive, human. The Tycoon sat in the front row, eyes shining in a way he never allowed in public. Pride filled him, but so did humility. For the first time in many years, wealth felt small to him. Power felt tiny. Because here in front of him, a boy once begging in the snow was now commanding an entire auditorium with nothing but music. He remembered the moment he had laughed at Liam. He felt shame again, but it was not painful now. It was a marker of how far they had come, a reminder of who he had been and who he had become because of this boy. The song changed soft to steady, steady to bold, bold to breathtaking. Liam was not just playing, he was telling the world who he was. He told them, I was cold, I was hungry, I was invisible, but I survived. I carried music through the snow. I believed even when nobody did. I found my place. And now you will hear me. With every key pressed, he released pieces of his past like birds taking flight into the air. He gave the audience winter nights, lonely sidewalks, the sound of hope in a trembling hand. And in return, the audience gave him silence, the deepest respect music can receive. When the final note arrived, it didn't crash or fade. It hung in the hall like a falling star, bright, still, unforgettable. Then silence. Silence so thick it felt sacred. Liam's fingers remained on the keys, his chest rising and falling, sweat shining above his brow. He did not move. He waited for judgment, for acceptance, for something he wasn't sure he deserved. It came all at once. Applause exploded like thunder cracking open the sky. Loud, endless, unstoppable, people rose to their feet. Cheers echoed against golden walls. Some clapped with shaking hands, some wiped tears with trembling fingers. Strangers shouted his name like he belonged to them, like they had known his journey, even though they only heard it. Liam looked up, stunned, breath breaking with relief. His eyes filled. This time the tears fell not of pain, but of joy heavy enough to overflow. He stood slowly and bowed, small and humble, but shining like the brightest star on a winter night. He scanned the front row until he found the Tycoon. The man stood too, not like a wealthy businessman, not like a judge, but like a proud father. His face was soft, broken in the most beautiful way. He clapped with emotion so visible that even the stiffest audience members felt their hearts tighten. Liam stepped away from the piano and walked toward him. The Tycoon extended his hand, expecting to shake the boy's as musicians do after success. But Liam didn't shake, he hugged him. A gentle, grateful, full-hearted hug, the kind that heals both sides. For one moment neither spoke, because some things don't need words. When the concert ended, reporters rushed. Music directors begged for future performances. Some offered scholarships, others offered recordings. Liam stood in the middle of cameras and microphones, still the same boy but finally seen. He answered simply, I only want to play. And the world listened. Years passed and his name grew from conservatory stages to national halls, from local news to international headlines. People spoke not just of his skill but of his story. The boy once laughed at became the musician who made the world pause. He never forgot cold nights on the street. He never forgot hunger or silence. But most importantly, he never forgot the man who gave him a chance. They remained in each other's lives. The Tycoon helped him reach stages, but more than that, Liam helped him rediscover heart. Music softened a soul hardened by business. A boy saved a man without trying. And every Christmas night, no matter how famous he became, Liam returned to the same street corner where his journey began. He stood beneath falling snow, closed his eyes, lifted his instrument, and played not for money, not for applause, but for memory. People passing stopped and listened. Some cried, some smiled. Everyone felt something, because the boy in the cold was no longer cold. He was warm, he was heard, he was home in music always, and the world finally knew. The Tycoon once laughed at a homeless child, but that child was a natural virtuoso. And now everyone laughs only with joy. Now everyone laughs only with joy.